24.3.3 from the floor. Do we have one of those parties here ready to introduce that document? So I don't see any response, so we can't commence discussion on this item if we don't have one of the proponents in the room ready to report. Okay, we don't have those parties in the room. Oh, we do have Kenya here. We were just about to move on to another item. So, Kenya, are you able to introduce this one? Kenya.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think the chair of the terrestrial working group was not in the room, but we had this document introduced in the working group and had a lengthy discussion with some amendments introduced by the EU and other parties, and the chair ruled that we should be able to finalize with the amendments this evening, and I believe the chair of the terrestrial working group should be able to report on the work of the working group chair. Unless you want me to, for the purposes of other parties, to still introduce the old document, not as amended, then I can proceed.
Thank you, Kenya. I'll just consult and get back to you very shortly. Thank you very much, Kenya, and thank you for your willingness to explain. I think given that this has already been discussed in the working group and the parties who have the greatest interest are participating in that process, and given your reassurance that it will reach a conclusion there, and also given that the chair of the working group isn't here at the moment, we'll ask the chair of the working group to report progress at a more convenient time. Is that acceptable, Kenya?
Yes, Chairman.
Thank you very much. And so we can move on. We are now moving from the dry to the wet and getting into 24.2 aquatic species. We know that a large number of items are being discussed also in the aquatic working group, but I believe that the appointed counsellor for aquatic mammals is ready to introduce document 24.2.1, important marine mammal areas. Is that so?
Yes.
Thank you. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Chair. And given that this is my first COP and my baptism of fire, as it were, I would like to take 1 minute to tell the parties how honored I am to having been appointed by them, and I will try not to disappoint them. And also I wanted to thank the incredible help I obtained from the Scientific Council, from the Secretariat in the first place, and also I would like to thank the hospitality, the warm hospitality of the Philippine government. The document that I am presenting to you briefly is document 24.2.1, important marine mammal areas. And Chair, given that this is sort of a little bit of a new item, I hope you can give me a couple of minutes to explain what it is about. The important marine mammal areas, also known as IMAs, are place-based conservation tools identifying discrete portions of habitat that are important for one or more marine mammal species that have the potential to be delineated and managed for conservation. So the identification of IMAs is a process which is solely based on the application of scientific criteria, and it's based on the best available science. And by the way, I would like to comment also that IMAs are modeled after important bird and biodiversity areas by BirdLife International, IBAs. So it is very important to understand that IMAs are not marine protected areas, have no management nor legal connotations. They are not prescriptive, but offer much needed robust scientific knowledge to management and policy decisions. They should be seen as a bonus rather than as a threat. The IUCN Marine Mammal Protected Areas Task Force is currently identifying a global network of IMAs through a series of regional expert workshops between 2016 and 2021. Each workshop follows a predefined process, which is developed in consultation with the marine mammal science and conservation community to create knowledge products for use by marine researchers, managers, and policy decision makers in each workshop region, such as marine spatial planning, the identification of marine and institution of marine protected areas, etc. The outputs from this series of workshops are subject to independent review and made publicly available online via the IUCN Marine Mammal Protected Areas Task Force website and dedicated IMA Atlas. This is just my last slide, Chair. It's a summary of the activities that have been undertaken since last year when the work started. We have completed the Mediterranean IMAs in cooperation with the CMS COP12 agreement last year. In early this year, we have completed the Pacific Island region in cooperation with SPREP. And both organizations we very gratefully acknowledge for their support. In the coming few years, we are going to cover most of the remaining southern hemisphere with the exception of the South Atlantic, with support from the German government within their International Climate Initiative and with support from the French Agency for Biodiversity. So this is what we have in storage right now for the IMAs. We have in front a draft resolution which proposes to endorse the process and criteria and request the parties to support it, and a set of decisions involving instruction the Scientific Council and the Secretariat to collaborate with the IUCN Marine Mammal Task Force and report to the parties. During lunch, we had a side event explaining a little more in detail what the IMAs are about, and we foresee that the matter will be subject to further discussion at the Aquatic Working Group. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for that clear explanation. I now ask whether there are any parties who want the floor to discuss this. I'm not ignoring you, EU, I'm just waiting to see whether there are any others. Okay, EU and then Australia. Thank you.
Thank you and good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. The EU and its member states thank the Aquatic Mammals Working Group for reviewing the process and criteria for the identification of important marine mammal areas and to making recommendations to COP12 regarding relevance of the concepts to CMS. We also support adoption of the draft resolution and the draft decision. However, we have a few amendments to suggest, also in line with the recommendations from the Scientific Council. So I'm in your hands. Do you want me to make those proposals in the working group or rather here in the Committee of the Whole? I'm in your hands on this one. Thank you.
If the amendments are minor, in principle, it would be good to make them here if they're not going to change the nature of the recommendations. But of course, we won't know that until we've heard the other interventions. So I might just await a decision on that and see what the others have to say, and then make a decision whether to go to the working group or not. Is that okay? Yes. So we've got Australia and then Argentina after Australia. Thank you. Australia.
Thank you. Australia has a vast marine area under our jurisdiction and one of the world's largest representative networks of marine parks, protecting over 3.3 million square kilometres. Marine parks help protect and maintain our unique biodiversity, including many threatened and migratory species. Marine parks in Australia represent examples of the different marine ecosystems and habitats found in the oceans around Australia. They variously protect important habitats like coral reefs, undersea canyons and seamounts, and the diversity of marine life they support. Australia very much welcomes the development of criteria for identifying important marine mammal areas, and Australia supports the resolution on important marine mammal areas and the endorsement of the IMO criteria.
Thank you very much, Australia. Now I call upon Argentina.
Gracias, señor presidente. Buenas tardes. Bueno, Argentina también está en condiciones de apoyar una resolución sobre el tema de áreas importantes de mamíferos marinos. Sin embargo, tenemos también algunas inquietudes sobre algunos de los contenidos. Entiendo que la naturaleza de estas inquietudes ameritarían ser tratadas en un grupo de trabajo. Sin embargo, a los efectos informativos del plenario me gustaría mencionar al menos los títulos de las dudas que tiene Argentina con respecto a la resolución. En primer lugar, es con respecto a una posible delegación que estaría haciendo la CMS a la Unión Internacional para la Conservación de la Naturaleza, IUCN, en cuanto a la realización de los talleres para identificación, así como en la adopción de los criterios que hoy por hoy son criterios de la UICN, IUCN en inglés. Dado que la membresía de este último organismo es diferente de la CMS, nos quedan algunas dudas de cómo quedaría especialmente la organización de los talleres en este contexto. Por otra parte, nos quedan también dudas sobre el alcance de la resolución en cuanto a la jurisdicción, porque nos da la impresión que no se diferencia entre áreas dentro y fuera de la jurisdicción nacional. Y la nota explicativa podría dar a entender que la resolución se aplicaría tanto a áreas dentro como fuera de la jurisdicción nacional. Con respecto a esto nos gustaría tener una discusión más detallada para que se pueda limitar el ámbito de aplicación a los espacios marítimos bajo jurisdicción nacional. Muchas gracias.
Gracias, Argentina. It sounds like we need the working group to address this, but I'm calling on other parties. We have the Philippines. Philippines, I invite you to address us. Thank you, Philippines.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Since this is the first time the Philippines will be addressing the Committee of the Whole We would like to take this opportunity to thank the CMS Secretariat for the support and the help in the, for the Philippine government in the preparation and hosting of the CMS COP12. We also would like to thank the member states for attending this CMS convention. Truly, it is only through our all concerted efforts that we can really protect and conserve this migratory species. The Philippines has 70 nationally recognized and over 1,000 locally managed key marine biodiversity areas. Among these important marine areas in the Philippines is the Tanyon Strait, which is the country's first marine mammal sanctuary. The Tanyon Strait is one of the richest fishing grounds in the country, an important highway and nursery, breeding and resting grounds for the commercially important tuna, whale sharks, dolphins, and whales that support livelihoods of tens of thousands of marginal fisher folks. Tanyon Strait is home to globally threatened cetaceans such as Irrawaddy dolphins, found in only 3 areas in the Philippines: the Malampaya Sound, Guimaras Strait, and Quezon in Palawan. The Philippines supports, Mr. Chair, the recommended actions under Document 24.2.1 and its annexes. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Philippines. Do I have any other requests for the floor on this item? We have India. India, please, and then Costa Rica, and then WCS. India, please.
Good afternoon, Chairperson. In India, protected areas that fall in or within the part swath of 500 square kilometer to the high tide line and to marine environment are included in the Marine Protected Area Network. Based on this definition, there are 31 such marine and coastal protected areas. Further, a total of 4.97% of the coastal zone of peninsular India has already been included in the existing marine protected areas. That is covering 8,214.59 square kilometer of mainland and 1569.63 square kilometer of island, which is almost 50% of the Aichi Biodiversity Target 11. Apart from designating marine protected area, several marine species including all cetaceans has been included in the Schedule of Wildlife Protection Act 1972 for according high degree of protection. In view of this, India in principally support the resolution put by the Secretariat in this regard. Thank you.
Thank you very much, India. And I now call upon Costa Rica.
Muy buenas tardes. En nombre de la región de América Central, América del Sur y el Caribe, queremos dar el apoyo a los comentarios que emitieron los compañeros de la región de Argentina sobre este tema. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, and thank you for being brief and to the point. If there are no other parties, I would like to call upon ACOBAMS. No other parties at this point. I am going to send it to the working group, but ACOBAMS, I'd like to hear from you, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Since this is the first time that I'm taking the floor, I would like to thank the government of the Philippines and the CMS Secretariat for hosting and organizing this conference, and also to thank you for the wise guidance you are providing. Regarding the EMAS, the ACOBAMS Permanent Secretariat supports this initiative, as it supports the ongoing efforts made by ACOBAMS on identifying cetacean critical habitats, which apply a threat-based approach to identifying important areas to cetaceans. This is related to the recently adopted Resolution 6.24. So this ongoing work on EMAS will allow the identification of new relevant cetacean critical habitats in the ACOBAMS area, and will definitely facilitate the implementation of sustainable conservation actions at the regional level. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ACOBAMS. And next I call on WCS.
Thank you very much, Chair. And this intervention is on behalf of the Wildlife Conservation Society, BirdLife International, and WWF International. and we'll try to be brief because we understand this is going to the working group. We support the adoption and appreciate the draft resolution and decisions. We have some suggested edits that we will offer to be helpful to parties in the working group. And we concur that the identification and conservation of key habitats are critical to ensuring the conservation of marine mammals, particularly of the more than 60 species currently listed on the CMS appendices. And we note that this entire process is not about deciding where there should be protected areas, but just identifying those habitats that are critical for action for these species. In addition, we believe it's vital to evaluate important areas for marine mammals in the context of key biodiversity areas, KBAs. Our three organizations are all members of the newly formed KBA partnership, and we recommend that the draft resolution also endorse the IUCN Global Standard for the identification of KBAs, which has been endorsed by the IUCN Council and discussed extensively. We also encourage those working to identify IMMAs work to enable the testing and identification of potential KBAs throughout the ocean using the IUCN Global Standard. And in the working group, we will suggest some text to encourage collaboration with the KBA partnership in order to identify IMMAs that are also KBAs. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much, WCS. So with that, Spret would like to intervene, and I'm sorry I didn't see your flag, Spret. I beg your pardon, so let's hear from Spret. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and congratulations from my organisation on your appointment as Chair, and we thank you for the way you're moving this along. We would just like to acknowledge our gratitude for being the second region in the IMA process, and to stress that from our perspective as an advocacy and management organisation for an area that covers over 10% of the planet's oceans, we greatly value the expertise that the IMA process has brought to our 21 CIFCAN countries and territories. And as the two previous speakers have observed, this is not about marine protected areas, it's about providing better information for marine spatial planning and future establishment of areas to protect animals that are very important to our cultures and our economies. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Spret. We have another. Fiji wishes to make a comment on this. Fiji, please.
Thank you, Chair. As Fiji is also taking the floor for the first time, we would like to show our sincere appreciation and gratitude to the government of Philippines for hosting the CMS COP and for their hospitality. Fiji supports the IMA initiative, and the purpose of IMA is to summarize the best available scientific evidence to guide governments in the selection of appropriate locations that they may wish to consider for inclusion in future MPAs. It is informative, not prescriptive, and in the Pacific Island countries, we welcome this initiative as we lack technical expertise, and this is a very good initiative, and we support the adoption. Thank you.
Thank you, Fiji. If there are no other requests, then we're going to move this to the working group. The chair of the working group has probably anticipated this anyway. So understanding that there are some perspectives, particularly from the EU, or some potential amendments, and from Costa Rica and Argentina, I'm sure that the working group will be able to resolve this, and we will come back with a revised recommendation. Thank you very much. So I would now like to continue on the marine theme and move to the next agenda item. And I won't say this too loudly because it's about marine noise. So to introduce document 24.2.2, and also noting that there's an earlier reference to this in document 21.2.3, I call on the Secretariat. Heidi.
Thank you, Chair.
So, marine noise is an issue that CMS has been working on for a number of years. We've had 2 resolutions on the subject in the past, at COP9 in 2008 and on COP10 in 2011. And CMS parties have very clearly recognized this as a serious threat to marine species. It affects many species listed on the CMS appendices. It affects many species covered by daughter agreements or memoranda of understanding. And it also, as we know from recent publications, affects very many prey species that our key species or the species we focus on are depending on. So it clearly is a crucial matter to consider. Given its importance as a threat, CMS, but also ASCOBANS and ACOBAMS, have really looked closely into the matter in the past and have, for example, made recommendations for the use of environmental impact assessments to really take those effects on species into account in the early planning stages of any activities in the marine environment. Shortfall that was identified was, however, that very often national or even regional operational guidelines focus mostly on the impacts to be avoided and on mitigation measures to be taken during proposed operations, and that also usually with a focus on cetaceans only and not on the other species that the CMS family is concerned with. Almost none of the guidelines available previously cover specific content that should be provided in environmental impact assessments before approvals or permits are granted. So in order to address this shortfall, and thanks to generous contribution from Monaco under the Migratory Species Champion Program, we have been able to develop guidelines that are designed to help regulators to with advice and asking for what to ask for in environmental impact assessments. So it will be easier for them to implement the resolutions already adopted that request parties to use best available techniques and best environmental practice in their domestic jurisdictions. The aim of the guidelines that were developed is really a tool for decision makers so that they can ensure they are being presented with sufficient information to make an informed decision about impacts of any activity that comes before them for approval. There have been extensive consultations on those guidelines in 2 iterations. So all of you parties and also the Scientific Council members, and similarly the parties and members of technical advisory bodies of the daughter agreements, ACOBAMS and ASCOBANS, as well as some of the MOUs, have seen the document or the annex to the resolution twice, namely in the first half of 2016 and then at the end of 2016 and early 2017. So what you see before you in the document is a consolidated resolution, as the chair already mentioned, which turned out to be very long and very complex. So we have proposed some changes to it that adopt the guidelines, but also simplify the resolution and bring it up to date so that it reflects more recent developments and not just the status of 6 years ago. The guidelines we are proposing for adoption are found in Annex 2, and there are some associated draft decisions in Annex 3 of the document. I would also like to point out that there's a related information document. It's information document 11 with technical support information. And we haven't discussed the document yet in the working group, so this is the first time it's brought to the attention. Thanks.
Thank you, Secretariat. So just to reiterate, the Conference of the Parties is recommended to adopt the draft resolution and adopt the guidelines which are an annex to the resolution, and then there are relevant decisions. So I will open the floor, but recognising also that this will go to the working group. There's a lot of material here, so I don't propose to discuss it in detail here. But I would certainly like to hear from parties if they have brief comments at this stage. Okay, I'll start with Norway, I believe, wishes to intervene, and if there are any other parties, please put up your flag, and I've seen Ocean Care down the other side here, and Argentina. So Norway, Argentina, EU.
Thank you very much, Chair.
And IWC. Thank you. Norway.
I'll be very brief. I'm sure quite a few parties do already have guidelines within the different sectors, different relevant sectors. When you look at myself or the environmental sector, I must say it's a bit difficult to really comprehend and read through these documents. So that means that one thing is that the sectors back home they think this is okay for them. At the same time, there is this possibility of changes, because this guidelines, they should be a collation of existing and already adopted material in different fora. But again, it's difficult for us on the environmental side to be sure that that is the case. But I know I've asked the Secretariat, and they have confirmed that is the case. So I think that's a good way forward, to not to sort of introduce changes into the text that is quite complicated, as you said yourself. So we wouldn't be too worried then if that was the case, as was informed by the Secretariat. Thank you.
Thank you, Norway. As I understand it, you're comfortable with what it is, if that's what's decided. I call on Argentina.
Gracias, señor presidente, y gracias también a la Secretaría por el informe y el trabajo que ha puesto detrás de este proyecto de resolución. Tenemos dos comentarios muy simples, casi formales. El primero es que en el párrafo 5 del proyecto de la resolución creemos que debería corregirse y actualizarse la mención que se hace en la resolución de la Asamblea General de Naciones Unidas sobre océanos y derecho al mar, para que se lea A/Res/71/257, Oceans and the Law of the Sea. Ya hicimos llegar a la Secretaría este párrafo para que pueda tomar nota. Por otra parte, en el párrafo que obra en el proyecto de resolución en la página 8, se da la bienvenida a una directiva de la Unión Europea, del Parlamento y del Consejo Europeo 2014/52/EU, y no estamos seguros de que sea apropiado dar la bienvenida a una normativa nacional o comunitaria en un instrumento multilateral. Podemos o eliminar este párrafo, o si no poner alguna forma de...
Another one which is a little more neutral, so sort of welcoming the directive 2014/52 EU. Maybe we take note. Thank you.
Thank you, Argentina, for those helpful suggestions. Can I just ask you to repeat the location and the wording of your first suggested amendment? It came a bit fast for some of us. Could you just let us know where that is exactly and read it out again, please?
Yes, my instructions read paragraph resolution.
Perhaps you could just read the amendment again too, just to be clear. Thank you.
The draft resolution, we would like to have an update of the mention of the resolution of the United Nations General Assembly on decision on the law of the sea. So it says A/Res/71/2.7, oceans and the law of the sea.
Very much, Argentina, and my apologies for being slow. I had a good lunch. Do I have any other parties? Because yes, we have the European Union. Sorry, you're on the list, European Union. Any other parties after the EU? after which I'll ask the IWC. So EU, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The EU and its member states recognize these guidelines as an important step forward in promoting the prevention, reduction and mitigation of anthropogenic underwater noise. This guidance document will help stakeholders and decision makers to contribute to the aim of the recently amended EU Marine Strategy Framework Directive and the new 2017 decision by laying down criteria and methodological standards on determining good environmental status of marine water and to achieve the aims within the EU of the EU Habitats Directive. The EU and its member states encourage parties to consider using these guidelines, and we encourage further work on the development of common assessment methodologies on the impact of underwater noise on key relevant marine species. As regards now the draft resolution and the decision that is before us, we support the adoption of the draft resolution with some small changes. One is that, and this is a comment we will make throughout this conference of the parties, we believe when we discuss guidelines to really recognize their voluntary nature, we usually say endorse and not adopt. So also in this document, we would suggest in paragraph 6b to say endorse rather than adopt. And then in 6 ter and 6 quarter to say that the parties and others consider adopting or consider using. We also think that, as has been said by Norway, that this is really a developing issue. So we would suggest in 12BB to add a request to the Scientific Council to assess the need for further updating the guidance, as this is really an evolving topic. We also invite the Secretariat to integrate the guidance into the guidance document the latest terminology as published by the International Standards Organization. If this has not already been done, we communicated this to the Secretariat before. And lastly, in paragraph 12AA, we don't think that we need a reference to HELCOM, Barcelona and OSPAR, as this has been done in the previous part of the document. And we are ready to hand these into the Secretariat or either now or in the working group as you wish. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm not going to make a ruling on whether we do it in the working group or not at this stage until I've heard from some other perspectives. Whichever is easiest is my principle. So okay, can I hear from IWC, please? Is IWC...
Technical issue.
Okay, IWC is having technical issues. No, we're good. No, she's away. Yes.
Thank you, Spre.
Thank you.
Use of your microphone.
IWC and SPREP have just joined forces.
Thank you, Chair. The International Whaling Commission is very grateful for the opportunity to participate in this conference of the parties to the CMS, and I would especially like to thank the Philippines for their hospitality. The IWC is an intergovernmental organisation with a membership of 87 contracting governments. It is established under the International Convention for the Regulation of Whaling to provide for the conservation of whale stocks and the management of whaling. The IWC addresses many different issues affecting the conservation and sustainable management of cetaceans, including marine noise. The IWC welcomes CMS's consideration of the important topic of marine noise and its impact on cetaceans and other migratory species. The IWC Scientific Committee has been discussing the range of impacts of noise on cetaceans since 2004 and has made a range of relevant recommendations, including with respect to seismic surveys, noise from shipping, measurements of ambient noise, and sound mapping. Last year, the IWC held a workshop on acoustic masking and whale population dynamics. In addition, the IWC has participated in CMS discussions on noise and is a member of the ACOBAM's Noise Working Group. The IWC welcomes references to the IWC and its work on noise in the draft resolution and draft decision, and looks forward to future collaboration with the CMS and its daughter agreements on this issue. We also have one suggestion for amendment of the text relating to the IWC, and I'm happy to give that now or in the working group, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, IWC. I think it's 99% sure that we will let the working group address this. So, yes, by all means, give it to the working group. That would be helpful. Next, I call on ACOBAMS.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the ACOBAM's Permanent Secretariat supports the adoption of the CMS family guidelines on environment impact assessments for marine noise generating activities. And this is considering that through Resolution 6.17 that was adopted last year, the ACOBAM's parties are requested to undertake strategic impact assessments or environmental impact assessment or any other relevant assessments such as appropriate assessments. And this is under the EU Habitat Directive prior to plan, programs and projects that may affect cetaceans and especially those involving noise, impulsive noise. In addition, and for your information, the ACOBAM Secretariat is developing international cooperation on underwater noise issue with other international organizations. I would like just to mention two issues. The first one is the joint ACOBAMS, CMS and ECS workshop on fostering interregional cooperation in underwater noise monitoring and impact assessments in waters around Europe. That was held this April, and this within the context of the European Marine Strategy Framework Directive. And the second piece of information is the contribution and participation of ACOBAMS into the EU Quiet Med project, which is also in the framework of the MSFD. Thank you.
Thank you, ACOBAMS. I now call on Ocean Care. You've been very patient.
Thank you, Chair. As this is our first time that we take the floor, Ocean Care would like to thank the government of the Philippines and the people here in Manila for the great hospitality, and also express our thanks to them and the CMS Secretariat for a very well organized conference. On behalf of the Humane Society International, IFO, NRDC, Ocean Care, Pro-Wildlife, WDC, WCS, World Animal Protection, and WWF, we congratulate the CMS Secretariat for the substantial work that has gone into developing the guidelines for environmental impact assessments for activities generating marine noise. This has been a considerable body of work, and it has been of the highest quality thanks to the wide input from international experts into development of the guidelines. We also note our appreciation to Wild Migration in convening those experts. The important issue of marine noise and the substantive threats that it poses to wildlife is quite rightly being increasingly recognized across a number of international forums. These include the United Nations and the June 2017 UN Conference to support the implementation of Sustainable Development Goal 14, known as the UN Ocean Conference, the International Maritime Organization, the International Whaling Commission, OSPA, IUCN, and others, and in particular, the Convention on Biological Diversity, which in Decision 12/23 encourages governments to require EIAs for noise-generating activities. So these guidelines annexed to the resolution provide a science-based new resource to parties to ensure they can fulfill that commitment. We welcome the lead the CMS family is showing on this issue. It's critical to recognize that ocean noise as a harmful marine pollutant that threatens many migratory species. However, human-generated marine noise continues to increase in the marine environment and now poses a major threat to many marine species, including cetaceans and other marine animals listed on the CMS appendices. While the impacts of marine noise on marine mammals is starting to be documented and better understood, the threat noise poses to other marine life, including commercially important fish species, zooplankton, and krill, is still emerging as a significant concern. Such species are, of course, key components of marine food webs and also primary cause for the migration of marine species in order to exploit these food resources. So it is now critical that impacts on these keystone species and the potential for prey scarcity is taken into account when assessing marine noise. The guidelines in the annex to the marine noise resolution provide a valuable tool for parties to manage the threat of marine noise. We strongly commend them to parties and urge their adoption through this resolution. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ocean Care. And if I have no other requests for the floor, I propose that we move final resolution of this item to the Aquatic Working Group. And I'm sure the Aquatic Working Group will be able to deal with all of the proposed amendments. So if you have them, please either to Heidi, the Secretariat, or to the Chair of the Aquatic Working Group. Thank you very much. So the next item in the marine theme is aquatic wild meat. And we have document 24.2.3 and the appointed counsellor for aquatic mammals. If you're ready to introduce this one as well, then looking forward to hearing from you.
Yes, Chair, thank you. The document that I am briefly presenting to you deals with the aquatic wild meat that affects large number of migratory aquatic species, many of which are listed in the appendices of CMS and include cetaceans, sirenians, crocodiles, turtles, and seabirds. And the document before the resolution contains extensive background, about 20 pages of background detailing the nature of the phenomenon of collecting aquatic wild meat, the species involved, the regions where the activities of aquatic wild meat collection mostly occur, and so provide an extensive background on the issue, and provide also information to the effect that the demand for aquatic wild meat is not only very likely significantly detrimental to the species affected, but it's also increasing. The resolution itself, in particular, suggests that the parties, actually the Scientific Council, be requested to establish a thematic working group dealing with aquatic wild meat to provide expert advice to the CMS parties and to coordinate science and policy participation with the relevant MOUs concluded under CMS and other agreements within the CMS family. It also recommends that parties and non-party range states and other stakeholders cooperate to increase collaboration and information sharing, to increase scientific knowledge, and to provide adequate financial, technical, and capacity support to ensure that the harvest of CMS-listed species for aquatic wild meat is legal and sustainable. Furthermore, there is a set of draft decisions. Some of them are directed to the Secretariat. In particular, to the Secretariat to approach the Collaborative Partnership on Sustainable Wildlife Management, CPW, to request a detailed discussion about the assessment and management of aquatic wild meat in order to prioritize work. And with the assistance of the working group, if established, to prepare a contribution to development of the Abidjan Convention Action Plan to combat trade direct consumption, illegal logging, and other uses of endangered, threatened, or protected coastal and marine species. Furthermore, there is a decision directed to the Scientific Council to invite participation of counselor and external expert into the thematic working group, of course, if established. And finally, if established, directs to the Aquatic Wild Meat Working Group a number of tasks that are, of course, important for the obtainment of the resolution goal. Thank you, Chair.
And thank you very much for that concise introduction to this issue. Do I have any requests for the floor from parties? I see India and EU. So I'll start with India, then European Union. India, please.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Chair, for giving us an opportunity. We support the proposal for the working group, and we also would like to reiterate the fact that such kind of issues was existing in case of a particular species called dolphin in India. And we are very happy to let you know that after that we have included this species as one of the restricted species in the country, and we have also tried to find out alternative means of involving people who are actually decimating the species in the country. So right now the situation is quite optimistic in India regarding dolphin conservation, and dolphin has been given the status of national aquatic animal. So we would again like to reiterate that we support the proposal and would like to take it forward. Thank you.
Thank you, India. In support of the proposal, EU, please.
The EU and its member states recognize that aquatic wild meat harvests can have detrimental impacts on the wildlife and ecosystems. We encourage the full implementation of the recommendation and encourage further work on the issue of aquatic wild meat harvests. Mr. Chairman, we only have a few changes, so maybe it's the best if I just go through them quickly, as I don't think there is a lot of discussion on this point. In the second recital, we suggest deleting and are obtained through illegal or unregulated hunts, as well as from stranded, dead or alive, and or by-caught animals, because we think that the definition should include wild meat obtained by any source and not just illegally caught source. Then in paragraph 1, we would suggest adding in the second line after to the CMS parties to collaborate with relevant organizations such as the International Whaling Commission, because we think collaboration with the International Whaling Commission is important in on this topic. Then in 12BB, and this is a comment we will suggest maybe that the Secretariat goes through all of the proposals, because when we address the Scientific Council, we should say should and not shall. And that's the same for 12CC. When we address bodies such as the Aquatic Wild Meat Working Group, it should be should and not shall. And finally, in this paragraph 12CC little e, we don't think that it's only the small cetacean subcommittee of the IWC which has information there, so we would suggest deleting this reference and just say share information with IWC and subject, etc. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, EU, and if there's no disagreement, then I would propose that you pass those on to the Secretariat and the working group. Is there any other party wishes to speak on this item? I don't see any other flags, but we have we have a flag, that's Brazil. We have Brazil, and then I have a request from Wild Migration. Brazil.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No, very briefly, I'd just like to announce that Brazil is working together with the IWC to host a workshop about bushmeat in the country from 19th to 21st of March. And we would like to take this opportunity to invite CMS and CMS parties to join us in this exercise. Thank you.
Thank you, Brazil. That's an opportunity well taken, and I'm sure we appreciate that announcement. Thank you very much. Then I would like to hear from Wild Migration.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As this is our first opportunity to take the floor, I'd like to echo the thanks that has been expressed to the Government of the Philippines, to yourself as the Chair, and the CMS Secretariat for what is proving to be an exemplary COP. Wild Migration, working alongside Ocean Care, has a long-standing involvement with the issue of aquatic wild meat, and in particular, we've been delighted to be able to focus a lot of effort through the Aquatic Mammals Working Group. The number of delegates will have participated in a side event yesterday that launched a new Abidjan Aquatic Wildlife Partnership that was formed, the genesis of which was formed in a decision at the Abidjan COP12 that was held earlier this year. It's a non-binding multi-stakeholder partnership which is going to work across trade, consumption and other uses of aquatic wildlife species, including endangered, threatened or protected species in West Africa and Central Africa. So, knowing these two things are converging, we really welcome the focus that CMS is giving to this issue, and we urge the adoption of the resolution, the formation in particular of a cross-taxa working group that can have a focus on the important emerging area of wild meat harvest, and that would include aquatic, avian and terrestrial around the world, and in particular to be able to have that new cross-taxa working group be able to work closely with the West and Central African region. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Wild Migration. So, unless there are any other burning requests, I propose that we endorse this proposed resolution and decisions subject to the amendments that have been provided by the EU. I beg your pardon, I've just been alerted to Ecuador, so I'll just stop that sentence and hear from Ecuador. Thank you.
Gracias, señor presidente. Ante todo, deseo felicitar al grupo que trabajó en esta resolución, que es muy importante, sobre todo porque no solamente ahora nos estamos concentrando en la carne de monte, sino en la carne de animales acuáticos.
We're now focusing on aquatic wild meat. This, what I think will be very difficult, I think it's very difficult for parties to determine the use of the meat of aquatic animals. But this resolution is extremely important so that we can undertake the necessary research and measures that need to be adopted to ensure that we have the management, in particular in protected areas, because as we all know, aquatic animals, in particular because they are migratory, can be found in various places. So this resolution has to relate to the areas of importance for management. So once more, I'd like to congratulate the group that worked on this resolution, and we certainly support it. Thank you.
On Peru.
Gracias. Bueno, el Perú también apoya esa propuesta, la cual está alineada a la legislación vigente en el país.
It's in line with the legislation that's in force in our country to do with species and the area, and the traceability of meat of marine origin is also important. And just as Ecuador did, we congratulate the group that worked on this thing.
I will echo that congratulation that you've been providing to the group. So I propose that we endorse this, agree to endorse this, and subject to the small amendments that we've already discussed. Thank you very much. Excellent. One less task for the working group. Thank you. Okay, the next item is item 24.2.4, live captures of cetaceans from the wild for commercial purposes, and the document is 24.2.4. And to introduce this document, we have Heidi.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this document provides a proposed revision of Resolution 1122, so adopted at the last Conference of the Parties, which was the first time actually that we considered this issue. This resolution invites parties to work on their national legislation if needed, so that live captures of cetaceans from the wild would be prohibited if this capture is for commercial purposes, and also to look at their provisions regarding international import and international transit of live cetaceans. In order to assist parties with the implementation of this resolution, the Secretariat, again thanks to funding from Monaco under the Champion Programme, have been able to develop draft best practice guidelines. These have been developed with the help of a consultant, looking both at information that parties submitted in response to a questionnaire in 2015. Some of you may remember that we had requested information, and we would like to thank everybody for the effort they put into this. And then the resulting draft guidelines were circulated for comments to parties also in December 2016. So the resolution has a couple of proposed amendments, partly to update the preambular paragraph that acknowledges the countries that have already legislation in place that corresponds to this resolution, and then also to adopt the best practice guidelines that you find in the annex to the resolution. So this document was already discussed this morning in the Aquatic Working Group, and the working group has concluded its work on it, unless we're being referred back to us. There have been some very small changes to the resolution itself, including the request from the EU to endorse the guidelines rather than adopt, so that has been taken note of. And one correction was made to the annex in line also with the comments provided by the Scientific Council on that particular point. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretariat. So I'm observing that the working group has done its work on this, and we are now effectively reporting back to the committee on this item. So having said that and had the introduction, and understanding that there are these few amendments, I open the floor for discussion. And I have the EU, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, we are actually not sure the working group has dealt with this topic, but maybe it's my jet lag. But I'm happy to say that although the draft contains a number of elements which seem to overlap with the mandate of CITES, notably when it comes to the development on the need for measures to regulate or ban import and transit of the species concerned, we also recognize that it's based on previous CMS resolutions and clearly defines the role of the CMS. So we actually support its adoption with two very small amendments. One is, it's, I think, 1, 2, 3, the 6th recital, which starts with further recalling that Resolution 99, etc. We would like to add as one of the threats, increasing marine traffic and collision risk. So probably this fits best after such as bycatch, increasing marine traffic and collision risk. And the other one was indeed, as said by the Secretariat, to replace adopts by endorses in paragraph 3 of the resolution. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, EU, and I'm sure that extra amendment will be acceptable. Any other parties wish to talk? India, yes, thank you, India.
We strongly support this. We endorse and strongly support.
Thank you, India. I like interventions that are that succinct. I have Ecuador and then Peru. Ecuador, please.
Gracias, señor presidente, por permitirme intervenir. En nombre de la región de América Central, el Sur y el Caribe, queremos
we would like to indicate that we don't have issues with the capture of live cetaceans in our region, but within the text in Annex 2, in paragraph 13, it should indicate which are the exceptions in emergency situations. So we could perhaps go through the document and indicate which are going to be the exceptions that are covered there. That's what we would like to see, because in our region we don't have this problem with the capture of cetaceans for trade. Thank you.
Thank you. Before going to Peru, can I ask the Secretariat whether you have a response to that question?
Sí, gracias. Solamente para decir que Perú apoya esta propuesta.
So one moment, please. Sorry, Peru. I'm just asking for Ecuador. Can you turn your microphone off, please? Thank you. And is the Secretariat able to respond to the question from Ecuador? Norway, are you responding to the suggestion from Ecuador, or is this something separate?
It's more or less separate.
Okay, we'll hold off on that. Thank you. We're just consulting here, Ecuador, whether we can provide a direct response to your request. So I think, yes, Heidi is prepared to respond to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. It took me a moment to wrap my brain around a legal question, which isn't my area of expertise. If I understood correctly, the issue is whether countries to which this issue doesn't apply are in any way bound by this, or they have whether exceptions need to be defined. In our understanding, these are best practice guidelines prepared for parties to use as a tool as they see fit. If they have the desire to change anything in their national legislation, they can refer to the guidelines to see ways in which this can be accomplished. If your national legislation is fully satisfactory, then you simply wouldn't need to refer to these any further. We do not in any way see these as a binding decision, or so they're just meant to assist you if you choose to make any changes. I hope that clarifies.
Does that clarify the question for you, Ecuador?
Gracias, señor presidente. Sí, nos queda claro, pero ante todo era una pregunta de la región de América Central y del Sur del Caribe. No solamente era de Ecuador.
South America and the Caribbean. It wasn't just Ecuador's question.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that correction. I appreciate that. I understand that. Now, Peru, I'm sorry to cut you off in mid-sentence, so please continue, Peru.
Sí, nada, solo para precisar que Perú apoya esta propuesta, que es muy importante contar con la legislación de protección de los cetáceos marinos y también de aguas continentales. En abril del presente año, el Perú aprobó una norma, una ley para proteger los marinos, los cetáceos de aguas continentales, ¿no? Y desde hace otros años atrás tenemos la protección de los cetáceos marinos. Sin embargo, el comercio ilegal
illegal commerce is a problem for consumption in Peru. So with these laws, we can strengthen our laws and the control of trade in meat which comes from cetaceans. Thank you.
Norway.
Thank you very much, Chair. I would also like to thank the Secretariat for their explanation just now made. As you know, our mind doesn't go many years back, so that was a very timely update. What I wanted to say is that Norway certainly do support sustainable use of resources when that is possible. Of course, you need a risk assessment to do so. In that sense, it's a bit unfortunate that we have, on one side, we have this CMS decision, as you called it, and on the other side, we have CITES, which is listing those species that can be used as such on Appendix 2, meaning that you can indeed, if you do comply with the non-detriment finding, activities that you need to do, and at the same time you have a number of parties that indeed expect that they can exploit that kind of resources, and I'm sure the IWC representative here can concur on that. So it's also about respecting, you know, livelihoods of local communities. I just wanted to point at that discrepancy, if you like. Thank you.
Thank you, Norway. So I take it you're not objecting, but it is a useful reminder for us. So I would like now to hear from ECOBAMS.
Thank you, Chair, and sorry to take the floor again. The ECOBAMS Permanent Secretariat obviously supports these draft best practice guidelines to assist the CMS parties on addressing the issue of live capture of cetaceans from the wild for a commercial purpose. In line with these guidelines, a draft resolution prepared by the COBAMS was submitted by Ukraine to the CITES COP17, leading to the adoption by the CITES parties of Decision 17.299 regarding the identification of origin of Tursiops truncatus ponticus kept in captivity. And this is in order to avoid replacement of dead dolphins kept in captivity by taking individuals from the wild.
Thank you, that's noted. Thank you very much. We have one other request from a party. We have Argentina.
Gracias, señor presidente. Y muy breve, simplemente como es un tema muy cercano, muy caro a nuestra delegación, no quería dejar de intervenir para acompañar el proyecto de resolución que se encuentra en línea con el compromiso asumido por Argentina y por el Grupo de Buenos Aires.
Argentina in the meeting in the non-lethal and use of cetaceans in our country, along with other countries with similar concerns. Brazil, Uruguay, Gabon and South Africa has suggested using a sanctuary for whales in the southern Atlantic to protect them from commercial hunting in 1986, and all hunting of cetaceans in that region will be prevented.
Thank you very much, Argentina. So I've heard support for this. Do I have any other requests for the floor? So subject to those... so subject to the minor amendments that we had at the start of this discussion, I propose that this meeting endorses this proposal and that we transmit that advice to the plenary. Yes, thank you. Excellent. Right, the next item is item 24.2.5, recreational in-water interaction with aquatic mammals. And the document is, I'll just make sure there's an addendum. Yeah, the document is 24.2.5, and there's no rev, so it's document 24.2.5. And so I'm asking the appointed counsellor for aquatic mammals to introduce this document if he's ready.
Thank you, Chair. The document we have in front is about very fast developing tourist activity involving mostly low-tech, bringing tourists in the water to interact with a variety of aquatic mammal species, mostly marine, but not only, and including cetaceans, dolphins, whales, pinnipeds, seals, sea lions, and sirenians. The draft resolution is preceded by an extensive background document that details the species that are involved and the locations in the world where these activities are known to occur. We think that this might be a little bit the tip of the iceberg because in many cases these operations are not very well advertised. But we were very surprised by the geographical extent of the phenomenon, which is represented in a map on page 6 of the document. That is truly impressive. The draft resolution expressed concern that this type of activities is fast growing and that it affects many aquatic mammals that are listed in the CMS appendices, and that the impacts by the often uncontrolled and unmanaged presence of non-qualified swimmers in the water not only is likely to cause physical harm to both humans and marine mammals, but more generally is likely to cause extended disturbances to the animals that in many cases come in bays and near the coast and in coral reefs to rest during the daytime. So the in extreme synthesis, the resolution, the draft resolution, urges the parties to adopt appropriate measures such as national guidelines, code of conduct, and if necessary, national legislation. Ensure that the activities do not have negative effects. Recommends that the measures also cover not only organized but also opportunistic in-waters encounters. Ensures the safety of marine wildlife as well as of human participants, of course, and facilitate research in order to assess the extent of the actual impact and long-term effect on the populations affected, and strongly encourages the parties to review any of their measures on a periodical basis. Furthermore, as far as the draft decisions proposed are concerned, there is one decision directed to parties to provide the Secretariat with copies of all the relevant documents of any measure described above. A decision directed to the Scientific Council to combine work streams related to recreational in-water interaction and boat-based wildlife watching in the coming intersession. To review, subject to availability of resources, existing guidelines, good practice, and underpinning scientific evidence, and based on such review, develop guidelines on recreational in-water interactions with CMS-listed species. And of course, there is also a decision directed to the Secretariat to transmit to the Scientific Council any relevant document and to support the Scientific Council in the development of the guidelines. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. So I open this topic for intervention. Does anybody want to? Yes, we have the Philippines, we have the EU. That's all I see so far, and Australia, and then ecobombs. So Philippines, please.
Thank you, Chair. Being an archipelagic state with over 600,000 square kilometers of marine waters, the Philippines harbors about 29 species of marine mammals, including the endangered dugong. Marine wildlife-based tourism is fast becoming a popular tourism product in the Philippines. Blessed with a high diversity of marine mammals, recreational in-water interaction has high potential to become another popular marine-based tourism product that could bring significant economic benefits to the country, including local communities. However, based on our local experiences with in-water interaction with marine wildlife, such as whale sharks and sea turtles, we have become aware and concerned that such interactions can have detrimental effects on both the exposed animals as well as the tourists. Such activities can put not only the animals at risk, but it can also compromise the safety of participating tourists. Concerns of this potential risk, the Philippines, through our Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources, has banned any in-water interactions with the cetaceans since 1990s. The Philippines, as a party to the CMS, therefore, support the adoption of the resolution contained in Annex 2, as well as the adoption of decisions contained in Annex 3 of the document UNEP CMS COP12, document 24.2.5, urging countries to adopt measures, including guidelines and appropriate measures, to address in-water interaction with marine animals. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Philippines. Your experience will be valuable to us. Next, I call on the EU.
The European Union and its member states thank very much the Aquatic Mammals Working Group for providing a briefing paper on the impacts of recreational in-water interaction with aquatic mammals. Taking into account the comments of the Scientific Council, we support the adoption of the draft resolution and decisions. We have two very small amendments, as we note that the International Whaling Commission is also working extensively on whale watching, and this work should be referred to. So in the one but before the last recital, we would suggest adding a recital that reads, recognizing the work carried out on whale watching by the International Whaling Commission. And in the draft decision, we would suggest adding after 12BBB, consult the International Whaling Commission during the preparation of the guidelines and other documents. And then we also, I want to share with you a comment we have received from our operators, because there is a lot of guidelines about recreational in-water interactions with different animal groups, and the operators would welcome if somewhere this could be compiled into one single document. So just to share with you this feedback we had from the operators on this topic. Thank you.
Thank you for those recommendations, which I'm sure will be acceptable. And thank you also for the guidance, for the feedback. I next call on Australia.
Thank you, Chair. This item, I note, was raised at lunchtime in the Aquatic Working Group, and Australia indicated that we had a number of amendments to the report, which we're yet to provide that working group, but subject to those changes to the factual information about Australia's in-water programs, we're quite comfortable with the draft resolution and decisions.
So Australia, do you think we need to hear from the chair of the working group on the report back on that item? Yeah, okay, that's fine. But I would like to hear from the other parties who have put their flags up and wish to speak. So we have, next we have Peru and then we have Brazil. Peru, please.
Gracias. El Perú apoya esta propuesta, ¿no? Dado que siente interés en el sector turismo en relación al avistamiento de especies marinas, se requieren encontrar urgentemente lineamientos y códigos de conducta consensuados. En ese sentido, Perú está trabajando una legislación nacional, pero creemos pertinente y muy necesario que se aprueben unos nivel de CMS, ¿no? Gracias.
Thank you, Peru, and I call on Brazil.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, this, just like some previous delegations, we do support the draft document, but we do have some minor suggestions also. And but this, I believe, this has been addressed in the proper working group. Thank you.
Thank you, Brazil. And so we will hear from the working group. But before we do so, Panama has requested the floor. Panama.
Sí, buenas tardes. Primero que todo, darle las gracias al gobierno de Filipinas por toda la organización. También a usted, director, por su designación. Por parte de Panamá, también apoyamos esta...
Hospitality. I'd like to congratulate the chairman on his election.
Ciertas consideraciones que como país hemos realizado durante estos
Panama would wish to request a certain number of make a certain number of comments. The Ministry of the Environment and the Assembly have set out a number of rules for mammal watching in our region. This ecotourism activity has developed apace over the last few years, and we needed some guidelines, so they have been drawn up and have led to good results. In conclusion, Panama is very much in support of this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Panama. Now I would now like to hear from Ecuador.
Gracias, señor. El Ecuador tenemos ya en el ámbito de la observación de los mamíferos marinos en general y contamos con nuestra legislación.
And we also have legislation and rules for conduct for those wishing to watch whales or dolphins. At close range, and I think the results are very good. We have been able to regulate the tour operators and the public, especially during migratory seasons. The rules have been respected when people want to see these aquatic mammals.
Thank you very much, Ecuador. And I'm aware that we've got a general agreement on this, subject to some amendments that the working group is working through. So I suspect Australia might be giving us some advice on that. Australia.
Actually, Chair, an apology from me. I incorrectly, as the Chair of the working group just pointed out, I incorrectly said we discussed this at lunchtime. We haven't actually got to this one in the working group. nonetheless, Australia does have amendments to make to this one. The chair got through so many items today, I obviously got confused, Chair.
Yes, you have to be wary of chairs that are going too fast. That's why this one's bolted to the ground. But I appreciate that clarification, Australia. So the working group is working through this. We'll take into account the suggestions that have been made. Many of them have already been handed in. So I do want to close this item, but not before hearing from two other groups who have asked for the floor. So firstly, ACOBAMS and then HSI. And there's another flag over the other side there, so I won't forget you. Oh, it is HSI. ACOBAMS, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So the ACOBAMS Permanent Secretariat obviously supports the CMS draft resolution on recreational in-water interactions with aquatic mammals. And as specified in the comments of the Scientific Council, the ACOBAMS high-quality whale-watching certificate, which was registered at the World Intellectual Property Organization, is only awarded to operators that do not offer in-water interaction. And this in order to avoid additional disturbance to cetaceans that are already under threat in the ACOBAMS area due to human activities. Thank you.
Thank you, ACOBAMS. And now I'd like to hear from HSI.
Thank you very much, Chairman. We're very pleased that you can see us across here, and in line with the introductory comments from everybody else, we'd like to thank the people and government of the Philippines and the Secretariat for the excellent facilities and facilitation. Chairman, there's tremendous human enthusiasm for interacting with aquatic mammals, and quite frankly, me too. However, in some places that enthusiasm is only constrained by our ability to physically come into close proximity with them. And delegates will be aware that there are images circulating around the internet, on the web at the moment, showing all kinds of terrible and disastrous interactions. We can not only harm these animals directly by inappropriately interacting with them, but we can displace them from important habitats, therefore having conservation impact on them. So, in brief, we strongly support initiatives in this area and encourage the work by this convention, working closely with others, including the International Whaling Commission. Thank you very much.
Thank you, HSI, and please be assured that I don't have difficulty spotting white-bearded gentlemen in the crowd. From what I've heard and my understanding that the working group is working through this, and I know they will have taken account of what we've heard here, and I look forward to the working group's report on this matter. Thank you very much. So we're ready to move on to the next item. Yes, so Brazil, if you're ready. The next item is conservation and management of whales and their habitats in the South Atlantic region, and you will introduce document 24.2.6.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let me start by saying that it's a great honor to be here today and have the opportunity to address a subject that is very dear to us, the conservation and protection of whales in the South Atlantic Ocean. The waters of the South Atlantic Ocean are home to no less than 51 species of cetaceans. 6 of these are highly migratory whales that feed in the Antarctic and subantarctic oceans during the summer and breed in tropical, subtropical, and temperate waters in winter and spring in the South Atlantic Ocean. All large whales in the South Atlantic were exploited by commercial whaling, and each species suffered different degrees of exploitation, and some were severely depleted. Despite the moratorium of whale hunting for commercial purposes established in 1986, many of those populations are still far below the pre-20th century era of industrial hunting. Today, populations of whales and dolphins face challenges and threats different from those they had faced previously. Climate change, acidification of the oceans, marine litter, collision with ships, entanglement further threaten the long-term survival of these species. We need to commit to acting locally, regionally, and globally. We need to act in the defense of the great cetaceans in every opportunity, bring this debate to forums such as the Convention on Migratory Species. CMS presents a key opportunity to bring together collaborative work towards the conservation of great whales in South Atlantic Ocean. There are currently CMS agreements relevant to the conservation of migratory whales, dolphins and turtles, and CMS has adopted a series of resolutions to address these species, including numerous policies towards bycatches, ocean noise, marine debris, data deficiencies, and other impediments to their optimum conservation status. However, there is no specific CMS instrument for the protection of the South Atlantic whales species. The proposal now we are submitting, Mr. Chair, by the delegations of Brazil and Argentina, with the strong support from all the other Latin American and Caribbean parties to the Convention, for the adoption of an action plan for the conservation and management of whales and their habitats in the South Atlantic region, urges parties and encourages non-parties and stakeholders to implement and support the action plan as a matter of priority. The objectives of the action plan focus on all great whales seen in the South Atlantic Ocean area and provides the best up-to-date scientific information about their stock structure, threats, abundance estimates, and trends in abundance for each recognized stock. The action plan was designed to guide the management of threats faced by whales and the monitoring of their potential recovery in South Atlantic Ocean. This action plan also includes an important educational component for the general public to raise awareness about the importance of whale conservation for humanity and the planet. It also takes into account the cultural context of the various range countries so that educational resources are adapted to local populations, which is so vitally important in ensuring its relevance and effectiveness. The action plan is also very much based on scientific regional cooperation and coordination, aimed at building common scientific research to support joint initiatives for all participating countries in the future. Mr. Chair, this proposal is vitally important to support marine biodiversity conservation and to implement the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, particularly SDG 14 on oceans and SDG 15 on biodiversity conservation, and is also in accordance with the Convention on Biological Diversity. We have been encouraged by the scientific evidence of the essential role that whales play in maintaining healthy marine ecosystems and the economic opportunities that the non-lethal use of whales can bring to coastal communities. Oceans are essential to life on this planet, and then there could hardly be a more timely issue for the international community to face so as to adequately address the challenges and opportunities for the conservation and sustainable use of marine natural resources. To conclude, Mr. Chair, we kindly request the support from all CMS parties to adopt at this COP12 the present proposals of resolution and decisions towards the South Atlantic whales conservation. After all, their future is also our future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brazil, and thank you for all of the work that you've put into this. I understand that the working group has discussed this and that progress towards agreement has been made. So I'll invite some brief comments. I think perhaps the chair of the working group may wish to comment if he's ready. I'll invite the chair of the working group to make a comment before we open it to parties.
Thank you very much. I was simply going to say that we had discussed this, and this proposal was fully endorsed by the working group. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do I have any comments on that? Given that the working group has done its work on this, do I have any comments? We have European Union, and that's all so far, EU and Peru, EU and Angola and Australia. So EU, Peru, Angola, Australia, EU, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Indeed, the working group dealt with it, but I nevertheless wanted to take this opportunity on behalf of the European Union, its 28 member states, to really congratulate Brazil for making this proposal. This is indeed the first COP where they are present as a party, so bem-vindo Brazil. The EU and its member states strongly support the draft resolution and decision, and it's also fully in line with our position concerning whale sanctuaries in the work of the International Whaling Commission. Thank you.
Thank you, EU. I was almost expecting you to say you had two very small amendments, but not on this occasion. Peru, please.
Bueno, nosotros apoyamos esta propuesta, la cual consideramos muy importante para la conservación, no solo de garantizar
only to guarantee the conservation of the whale populations, but also their habitats. We support it.
Thank you, Peru. Appreciate the brevity of your comment. I next ask Angola.
Donc, je suis, nous sommes, comme Angolais, je suis
As Angolans, we are very pleased with this proposal from Brazil, because we also have issues linked to the beaching of whales on our coasts, and up until now we haven't really had the means and the techniques to be able to find solutions. So this proposal from Brazil could possibly help us as well in the future, so we support their proposal. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Angola. And next I have Australia.
Thank you, Chair. Australia too strongly supports Brazil's proposal for an action plan to strengthen the conservation and management of whales and their habitats in the South Atlantic region. Proposal complements existing domestic and international efforts to address the key threats to cetaceans in the South Atlantic, including entanglements in fishing gear and vessel collisions. The action plan is a focused and practical document and will foster greater scientific coordination and data sharing and, importantly, support the blue economy in the region, including by helping to further develop a sustainable whale watching industry. Australia supports adoption of the resolution, the decisions, and the action plan for the protection and conservation of South Atlantic whales.
Thank you, Australia. And the final party I have on the list at this stage is South Africa. South Africa, please.
Thank you, Chair. South Africa welcomes initiatives aimed at addressing the threats to and promoting the conservation of great whale species in the South Atlantic area, with special regard to those listed in Appendices 1 and 2 of CITES, CMS, my apologies. In this regard, and due to South Africa's commitment to the conservation of these migratory species, South Africa has worked closely with Brazil to establish the South Atlantic Whale Sanctuary, recognized by the International Whaling Commission. But we do have some concerns about the adoption of the action plan by this CMS COP, considering the processes underway in terms of IWC and the need to ensure alignment. I note that the Aquatic Working Group already considered and endorsed this matter, but South Africa would like to request additional time to consult, and in this regard, and would like to request the Committee of the Whole to allow for a bilateral discussion with Brazil on this matter before it's adopted. Thank you.
Thank you, South Africa, and you suggested a way forward. So if you have that bilateral discussion with Brazil, I'm sure we can resolve what questions you have and come up with solutions. I have a request for the floor from Argentina, and from Brazil I'll invite you to talk to us after Argentina. Argentina, please.
Gracias, señor presidente. Simplemente como copatrocinador de esta propuesta quería presentación. Hemos venido trabajando en este tema hace muchos años. Creemos que la
working on this for many years, and I think the proposal to set up a sanctuary is fully in line with the needs of the coastal communities in the region. Many have benefited from the gradual recovery of the species and populations of whales, so we welcome this resolution. Thank you.
Argentina, and I have a flag from Costa Rica as well, but I'll call on Brazil first. Brazil, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, first of all, I'd like to thank all delegations for their strong support to our proposal. We are positive that this is something that is going to be a big contribution to the debate. It's within the scope of CMS. So, and we are willing, of course, to work very closely with South Africa. Brazil and South Africa have very strong relations, and we collaborate on a number of issues. So, of course, this is also part of our collaboration, and we'll discuss with them and try to address some of their concerns, so that we can reach, successful adoption of these important documents here at this COP. Thank you.
Thank you, Brazil. We look forward to seeing Brazil and South Africa holding hands across the South Atlantic. And Costa Rica, please.
En nombre de Costa Rica quiero felicitar.
Costa Rica, I'd like to congratulate the excellent work that has been put into this proposal from Brazil for the whales, and we certainly support it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So unless there are any other parties asking for the floor, I propose that, subject to some bilateral between South Africa and... I beg your pardon, there is a flag somewhere. Can you... Uruguay. Sorry, we didn't see your flag very clearly. It was sparkling too much. Uruguay, please.
Gracias, señor presidente. Brevemente, queríamos agradecer.
We wanted to thank Brazil for presenting this document, and we support it, of course, as co-sponsors for this action plan. And our country also has a law on a sanctuary for whales since 2008. Thank you.
Thank you. So, as I said, unless there are any more interventions, in South Africa, I'm sure you've observed the level of support that there is for this proposal by Brazil, so you'll work together with Brazil to improve it. Okay, I think that's all of the aquatic issues that we have for the moment. Yes, Yes, so we're ready to go back on land, and according to our agenda, the next item would be the illegal killing, taking and trade in migratory birds. That's item 24.1.1. But I'd ask us if it's all right with you if we go back to 24.3.3, which was very briefly introduced by Kenya at the start of this session. The leader of the terrestrial working group is in the room, and I gather is willing to discuss where the working group has got to with regard to the adoption of the Indian Elephant Action Plan, document 24.3.3. What did I say? I said Indian. I beg your pardon. They haven't merged those species. The African Elephant Action Plan, and it's not even late in the day yet. So I invite Alfred, if you're willing to speak to us on this, please.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Indeed, it is the African Elephant Action Plan, and we took liberty this afternoon to introduce the topic at the working group. And indeed, we've had a very good discussion on it. We'll have a second reading later this evening. So hopefully by the evening time, we'll be able to get text that will be acceptable to all the members of the working group. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. So we'll hear a final, the final report on your deliberations a little bit further down the track. Thank you. So now we're on to birds. And as I said earlier, the first item under 24.1 avian species is 24.1.1 illegal killing, taking and trade in migratory birds. And I believe that the Secretariat is going to introduce document 24.1.1 and we'll just wait for the Secretariat to be ready.
Thank you, Chair. Document 24.1.1 contains an update on the implementation of Resolution 1116 of COP11, namely the establishment of the Mediterranean Task Force to tackle the illegal killing, taking, and trade of migratory birds and its developments to date. Thanks to the financial support of the European Commission, the task force operates actively, and 2 meetings have been held, kindly hosted by the governments of Egypt and Malta. The main...
but you need to get a bit closer to the microphone.
That's fine. As I was saying, thanks to the financial support of the European Commission, the task force operates actively and 2 meetings have been held, kindly hosted by the governments of Egypt and Malta. The main outcomes of these meetings have been the elaboration of a solid program of work of the task force for a period of 2016 to 2020 and a scoreboard to assess the national progress in combating the illegal killing, taking, and trade of wild birds. As a result of the mandate of the COP11, a strong cooperation has been built with the Berne Convention Secretariat, and the agreement on the referred scoreboard as a joint tool is a proof of such alignment of mutual efforts to address this problem in the region. This scoreboard is included in Annex 4 of the document. Other priority actions of the program of work have been led by the CMS Secretariat, namely the collaboration built with Interpol to deliver joint capacity building activities targeted to law enforcement officers in the region, activities that have counted with the support of the European Commission. Further capacity building activities to prosecutors will be undertaken in cooperation with the European Network of Prosecutors for the Environment. Finally, the document before you aligns with the appeal made in COP11 to explore the establishment of other task forces in other regions where such problems are prevalent, and therefore proposes the establishment of a similar task force to curb the illegal killing, the illegal hunting, taking, and trade of migratory birds in the East Asian Australasian flyway, covering all migratory bird taxa except water birds, and modeling on the Mediterranean Task Force. This new task force would also complement the efforts made by the East Asian Australasian Flyway Partnership, equivalent task force to address the illegal killing of water birds. 2 sets of decisions are included in Annex 2 and 3. Annex 2 relates to the actions needed for the continuation of the operation of the Mediterranean Task Force, as well as the implementation of its developments. Decisions in Annex 3 relates to the proposed establishment of the referred Asian Task Force. The CMS Scientific Council at its second sessional committee meeting in July reviewed this resolution and decisions and recommended them for adoption. COP is therefore recommended to adopt the drafted resolution and its annexes and adopt the draft decisions. With this, Chair, my introduction of this document ends. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretariat. Do I have any comments, please? I see the Philippines, I see the EU, and I see a few flags over there which Kath, thank you, and the far one. Can you... Right, sorry about that. And Mongolia. So countries we have... Who did I start with? Philippines, please.
Thank you, Chair. The Philippines supports the establishment of an intergovernmental task force to address the illegal killing, taking, and trade of migratory birds in the East Asian Australasian Flyway, as proposed under the CMS COP12 Doc 24.1.1. But before the creation of the task force, however, this delegation suggests that the following challenges be addressed first. Number 1, out of the 22 range countries under the EEAF, only 4 are members of the CMS, namely Sri Lanka, India, Mongolia, and the Philippines. Our question is, how are we going to engage the 18 non-CMS range countries? 2, the proposal includes sharing of financial resources. However, the mechanism in collecting and disbursing the financial contribution is not clear yet. Considering the above cited concerns, it is proposed that a technical working group be created by CMS to further study the proposal, the composition of which should include the 4 CMS members within the EAAF. It is further recommended that the Intergovernmental Task Force to be created include in its function the protection of all migratory species, including water birds. The Philippines also supports the recommendation to undertake a situational analysis of the illegal hunting of migratory birds in Southeast Asia. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Philippines. And I now call on EU.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The EU and its member states recognize the important contribution of the CMS to the fight against illegal killing of birds and encourage all parties and other stakeholders to continue this commitment by building on the work already carried out, for example, in the Mediterranean, by the Intergovernmental Task Force on Illegal Killing, Taking and Trade of Migratory Birds in the Mediterranean. We support the idea to transfer the experience gained during the work of this Mediterranean Task Force to other regions, especially to the East Asian Australian Flyway. The EU and its member states envisage the scoreboard developed by the Mediterranean Task Force being used as a voluntary self-assessment tool by parties to measure their progress in combating illegal killing of birds. However, the EU and its member states are of the opinion that this exercise should not be accompanied by a reporting process under the CMS. We acknowledge the work of the task force in developing the scoreboard and promote its use as a voluntary tool for self-assessment of progress of eradication of illegal killing, taking and trade of wild birds. We also note that the scoreboard needs further development and its focus should be on intentional illegal killing. Now, Mr. Chairman, we have quite a number of suggested amendments to improve the resolution. We are very supportive of this work, however, we think that there are some improvements to be made. And as these are quite substantial, we propose to rather discuss them in the working group, but I'm in your hands on how you want to proceed further. Thank you.
Thank you, EU. I'll wait to hear from 1 or 2 other parties before I make a determination, but I certainly hear what you're saying. So our next call on Mongolia.
Thank you, Chair. Mongolia supports Mongolia strongly supports the proposal to establish an intergovernmental task force on illegal hunting, tasking, and trade of migratory birds in East Asia Australian flyway in line with the proposed additional operative paragraph 1.2 of the resolution 11.16 as presented in document 14.1. We feel that this could be an invaluable mechanism not only to support our own efforts to eradicate illegal hunting in Mongolia, but also as a means to work with other countries when we are talking about transboundary cooperation, regional and global coordination and partnership, to which our neighbors migrate down the flyway, many of which have been particularly significant challenges to stopping this illegal activity. So we are supporting the proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Mongolia. I now call on Israel. Israel.
Thank you, Chair. Israel is part of this, the MIKT task force. We found the operation extremely useful, and we would like to commend all the work that was done in producing the scoreboard. The scoreboard can be a very, very useful tool for nations to evaluate their legislation and their actions to prevent the illegal killing. However, now that the scoreboard has been more or less completed, we're concerned about the continuing work of this ad hoc or of this task force, and the decisions as they're worded don't really give it much of a mandate. And we would be interested in working to improve these decisions a little bit, to give them a more directed work in terms of the continuation of what they're expected to be doing. And of course, this could be done in the working group or here as you, as chair, would prefer to move it forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Israel. And there's a clear conclusion in my mind, at least, that there's support, but there is need for some work, and that the working group is the appropriate place for that to happen. But having said that, I have a request from the floor from the East Asia Australasian Flyway Partnership and from Conservation of Arctic Flora and Fauna. So I call on EAAFP first, please.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. The East Asian Australasian Flyway Partnership, EAAFP, at its 9th meeting of the partners, which was hosted by Singapore in January of this year, approved a proposal submitted by the CAF, the Arctic Council's Biodiversity Working Group, and an EAAFP partner to form an interim task force on illegal hunting, taking, and trade of migratory waterbirds. A terms of reference was presented. It was agreed that CAF would be the coordinator and the chair would be sought. The following partners expressed interest in joining the task force: Indonesia, Philippines, Japan, Russia, Singapore, USA, and Wildlife Conservation Society, as well as CMS itself. EAAFP is only mandated to cover migratory waterbirds. If this CMS COP12 approves, via the proposed amendment to Resolution 11.16 in document 24.1.1 revision 2, the establishment of a CMS task force for the East Asian Australasian Flyway to cover all migratory birds. The EAAFP task force, if approved at the next 10th meeting of partners in early 2019, could take the lead on the waterbird component of this work. We hope to be able to report on the progress of the interim task force to our 10th meeting of partners with a view to proposing a formal EAAFP task force on illegal hunting, taking, and trade of migratory waterbirds. Thank you very much.
And thank you very much, EAFP, for that very constructive offer. I next call upon CAF.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Conservation of Arctic Flora and Fauna, or CAF, the working group of the Arctic Council, is thankful to CMS for the opportunity to be an observer at this COP and to the government of Philippines for their great hospitality. Increasing illegal trapping, poisoning, and take of all forms of Arctic migratory birds in and outside of the Arctic is a subject of great concern for Arctic countries. The program named AMBI, Arctic Migratory Bird Initiative, was established 2 years ago to work cooperatively with the non-Arctic countries on the flyway. AMBI workshop in Singapore earlier this year prepared the background for creation of East Asian Australasian Flyway Partnership Task Force on illegal hunting of water birds of this flyway, just mentioned by a colleague from EFP, and CAF is proposed to be a co-chair of this task force along with the government of one of the Asian countries. Now, CAF, or the Arctic Council, welcome and support very much the plans to create the working group to address illegal killing, taking and trade of all migratory birds on the East Asian Australasian flyway under the umbrella of CMS. We are looking forward to work cooperatively on this subject and will try to assist in different ways, including help with involvement of those countries in the region who are not CMS members to collaborate under this working group. That's a comment on what Philippines just raised. I think we see good ways how those countries who are not CMS members could be part of this working group. Of course, we cannot say for all of them, but we have already started discussions through Arctic Council channels to a number of countries which will be hopefully happy to join in. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
And thank you very much, Kath. So as I said, it's clear that this needs to go to the working group. So I am happy to entertain a couple more interventions, but I think it's important that this is discussed in the working group, and I wish to assign it to the Birds Working Group. And they may have already had some discussions in relation to this, but well, apparently they haven't discussed this, but they will be. So, but I am happy to hear from Bangladesh and Iraq, and then I'd like to close it. Bangladesh.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am first to convey my gratitude to the Filipino government for convening such a nice conference, and I am adding something in this context. After paragraph 7, add new paragraph 10 calls also on the Secretariat to ensure, in conjunction with the Secretariats of the East Asian Australasian Flyway Partnership and the Arctic Migratory Bird Initiative, the undertaking and completion of a situation analysis on the illegal hunting of migratory birds in Southeast Asia for reporting to parties at COP13 by BirdLife International using comparable methodology to the BirdLife International reviews already undertaken on this issue for the Mediterranean region, the rest of Europe and the Middle East. Thank you.
Thank you, Bangladesh. Iraq.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, I would say thank you for I would say thank you so much for Philippine government and CMS Secretary for granting hospitality. Secondly, Iraq is a new member in CMS agreement and become as a member last year. Illegal killing is a big problem in many countries. However, Iraq is deal well with this problem, especially after we enter for a natural site with World Heritage List last year. Iraq established an environmental police to deal well with this problem and another environmental problem, Iraq will be support CMS and any initiative to reduce this problem. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Iraq, and congratulations on joining the CMS. Israel, you want to make a final comment?
Yes, Chair. Just a point of clarification, please, in terms of, you said, mentioned this moving to a birds working group. I just wanted to see how this coordinates with the consolidation terrestrial working group, which is working on document 21.1.29, which deals specifically with this issue. So how is this going to coordinate between the two working groups? Thank you.
Yes, I'll ask the Secretariat to address that, and thanks for the question.
That's a good question. Any of the documents in Agenda Item 21, which are also handled in Agenda Item 24, such as this document, will be dealt with only in the working group, only in the substantive working group. So, for example, this will be in the avian working group, and it will not be in the review of decisions working group.
Thank you, Secretariat. So I think it's clear that this is going to the birds working group. Thank you. So the next item on our agenda is migratory land birds in the African Eurasian region, and the document is document COP12.24.1.2 Rev 1, and I believe the Secretariat is going to introduce this. Thank you.
With your permission, Mr. Chair, I will speak in Spanish. Buenas tardes a todos. El documento que vamos a tratar es el número 24.1.2 Rev 1 sobre las aves
migratory land birds in the African Eurasian region. As you are aware, there is a working group for land birds, and this working group in the last triennium has held 2 meetings, one in Abidjan in Côte d'Ivoire and another in Abuja in Nigeria. In the Côte d'Ivoire meeting, we drew up a work plan for this group. It's a roadmap for us, and at the Abuja meeting, we adopted the Abuja Declaration on the sustainable land use. And the main approach for West Africa, but it's also at that meeting the participants looked and agreed with the recommendations from the Abuja Declaration, and that they are applicable across the whole African continent. I would like to highlight the fact that Nigeria is a country that very much supports this project, and it feels very much involved in the Abuja Declaration. Another priority for the work group is also the promotion of synergies with other conventions and international organizations in the area of land bird conservation and sustainable land use. And so we are starting collaboration with the Convention Against Desertification, UNCCD, and there is a very strong likelihood that we will collaborate with that convention to organize a meeting next year along with the Convention on Biological Diversity to draw up good practices for land use in Africa. I would also like to say that all of this work on sustainable management of land links very directly with the Sustainable Development Goals, and it is an activity that can bring many benefits to birds and also to people. because we are looking at conservation of habitats and the conservation of ecosystems in Africa. I would also like to add that all of this work would not have been possible without the support of the government of Switzerland. Thank you very much, Switzerland, for your continued support. And we hope that we will be able to continue making progress in the next triennium, and we would call for the resolution to be adopted, the resolution on landbirds and the associated matters. In a letter received from the Executive Secretary of UNCCD, Ms. Monique Barby, we have had some minor corrections to the decisions, and from our point of view that improves the text, and of course we're willing to share this information with you when it is appropriate, and that is all I wanted to say. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Secretariat. So I think we have a proposal to amend Resolution 11.17 and to adopt draft decisions, of which there are 4. So can I hear any comments from parties, please? I see Nigeria, I see Switzerland, I see the EU, and that's it so far. Nigeria, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Since this is my first time of having the floor, I wish to use this opportunity to congratulate you as the chairman of this great conservation convention, as well as thank the government of Philippines for their warm reception. Mr. Chair, please, Nigeria is a co-sponsor to this document, which focuses on the issue of sustainable land use as a way to protect the habitats of migratory land birds in partnership with agriculture and forestry. In November 2016, Nigeria hosted a workshop on sustainable land use for people and biodiversity, including migrating birds in West Africa. All West Africa countries were in attendance. An Abuja declaration was really adopted to promote sustainable land use for people and biodiversity, including birds, cooperate with the other conventions, in particular with the United Nations Convention, to combat desertification, and also with CBD, Convention on Biodiversity, and using as birds as indicators for land change. Mr. Chair, please, the long-term survival of these migratory land birds depends on a proper land use, since agriculture gets very high budgets than conservation in most African countries, and women will be most benefit from this issue. Therefore, I strongly support the adoption of this proposal. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Nigeria. I next have Switzerland.
Land use change is a key driver in biodiversity loss across the world. As a result, for most taxa, and especially birds, habitat destruction and degradation is the biggest threat by far. Therefore, we believe strongly in the importance to even better focus on sustainable land use to conserve the migratory birds. Switzerland, therefore, welcomes the proposed amendments to Resolution 11.17 on migratory land birds in the African-Eurasian region, and the decisions as they are listed in Annex 2 of document 24.1.2 Ref 1. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Switzerland. Next I have the European Union.
Thank you, Chair. The European Union and its member states acknowledge the work done by the African-Eurasian Migratory Landbirds Working Group and note the urgency to address the issue of habitat loss and degradation through the development of policies that maintain, manage, and restore natural and semi-natural habitats within the wider environment. This includes working with local communities in partnership with the poverty alleviation community and the agriculture and forestry sectors in Africa. The EU and its member states support the work to continue the development of the proposed amendments to the resolution and the draft decision. And we have some suggestions for amendments, and are really looking forward to the discussion in the working group. Thank you.
EU, can I just clarify that the scope of your amendments are such that you feel that we need discussion in the working group, is that correct?
I'm afraid so, Chair.
Thank you for that clarification. Do I have any other parties who wish to comment on this? I don't see any. Any other observers? No. So, given your suggestion, but also given the support that we've heard from the parties who have intervened, I therefore propose that the working group has a look at this and works through the suggestions by the EU. And if anybody else has any comments in the working group, but I imagine, given the level of interest, that it could be quite quick to resolve. So if you have amendments, please table them in the working group, and we'll hear back the success of that at the end. Thank you. Okay, the next item is advances in the prevention of bird poisoning, and that's going to be introduced by the Secretariat, and we are going to hear about document 24.1.3 Rev 2. Secretariat.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity to introduce this document. Document UNEP CMS COP12 24.1.3 Rev 2 describes first of all in the background the development in the last triennium on the activities of the Secretariat and the Preventing Poisoning Working Group, which has been established based on Resolution 1026. At COP11, Resolution 1115, titled Preventing Poisoning of Migratory Birds, has been adopted with the annexed guidelines to prevent the risk of poisoning to migratory birds. Further information was published in INFDOC COP11 INF 34 on review of the ecological effects of poisoning on migratory birds. In the last triennium, in the year 2015, a regional workshop on preventing poisoning of migratory birds took place in Cape Town, South Africa, in August 2015, made possible through the kind of invitation by the government of South Africa and the thematic program for environment and sustainable management, natural resources, including energy, strategic cooperation agreement between the European Commission and the Directorate General for the Environment and UN Environment. As the outcome of this meeting, the sub-regional implementation plan to prevent poisoning of migratory birds in southern African countries 2017 to 2020 has been published. In 2017, in February, the second meeting of the Preventing Poisoning Working Group, which is, as mentioned, based on Resolution 1026, an intersessional working group under the Scientific Council. The second meeting took place in Toledo, Spain, at the kind of invitation of the regional government of Castilla-La Mancha, Spain, and with support of the coordinating unit of the Raptors MOU, and organized by CO BirdLife Spain. The report of this meeting can be found in INFDOC COP12 INF 8. The most important achievements or outcomes of this meeting are the proposed or the developed program of work 2017 to 2020, which can be found in INFDOC COP12 INF 9, and the proposed establishment and terms of reference of a lead task force, which is proposed to focus on poisoning of migratory birds from lead ammunition, fishing weights, and other sources of lead. Furthermore, this meeting suggests to seek for synergies with the vulture working group, particularly regarding the value of the proposed lead task force, as lead is one of the most important threats to Eurasian and African vultures. Furthermore, the working group suggests to promote goals with regard to UNEA 3 on the topic pollution, and it seeks also for permanent coordination by the appointment of a coordinator. So based on this, the proposed revised resolution 1115, Ref COP12, proposes the adoption of the terms of reference of the lead task force contained in Annex 3 of the document, and suggests to take note of the program of work for the triennium 2017 to 2020. The proposed decisions directed to parties suggest or propose a financial and technical support to the Secretariat for the appointment of a coordinator of the working group, and support to the organization of regional workshops in high-risk areas and flyways. As part of this document, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Secretariat. And so I open the floor for comment on this document and on the proposed draft resolution, the revised resolution and the decisions. So I see Pakistan, and do I have any other parties who want to take the floor on this? Yes. Madagascar, so, and the European Union. So I have those three for a start. So Pakistan, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Pakistan supports the proposal to facilitate concerted efforts to prevent poisoning of migratory birds. Definitely knowledge sharing and public awareness raising to minimize poisoning of migratory birds from anthropogenic environmental sources of lead, particularly from ammunition, are of particular importance. Seeking engagement from and with relevant industries, organizations and companies manufacturing lead ammunition will have significant impact. Thank you.
Thank you, Pakistan. Next on my list is Madagascar.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Madagascar appuie fermement l'attention continue.
Firmly supports the attention that we are paying to the prevention of bird poisoning and poisoning of other species, including by pesticides and hunting, lead used in hunting. We also support the continued work of the PPWG and the establishment of national plans for prevention of poisoning of migratory birds. This is one of our priority activities in Madagascar. We involve all relevant stakeholders, and we are now looking for funding to draft our action plan. We are doing everything we can to eliminate lead shot in wetlands. We have been working on this since 2016, and the 21 persistent organic pollutants, we're also working on those to eliminate those from our entire territory. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Madagascar. I next call upon the EU.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The European Union and its member states very much recognize the importance addressing issues of poisoning of migratory wild birds, and also we support very much further work on this topic. However, we have an issue with the creation of a lot of task forces, etc., and we recognize that there is already a preventing poisoning working group, and rather than establishing a separate task force, we rather suggest that this working group is being enlarged to include a subgroup to specifically address the issue of poisoning from lead. And we therefore have also proposals to make that in the draft resolution and decision that is before us. However, as it's transferring the creation of a new task force towards enlarging the mandate of the working group, both in its constituency and also in its mandate, this is quite a substantive proposal that we rather suggest to discuss in the working group. Thank you.
Yes, I agree that discussion of that proposal would be better done in that forum. Before I make a call on that, I'll ask whether there are any other parties or observers who want to intervene on this topic. No, so I think I'll take your suggestion, EU, thank you very much, and if the bird working group is happy to take this up, as I'm sure they are, then they can add it to their list of tasks, and I'm sure that will be a constructive forum in which to resolve this issue. Thank you very much. So we pass that issue on to the working group. We're doing quite well. Our next item, also to be introduced by the Secretariat, if they're ready, is advances in the prevention of bird poisoning. And they will introduce document 24.1.3. See, I said it was late in the day. I nearly called them something different entirely. So, conservation of African Eurasian vultures, 21.1.4. And I'll ask the Secretariat to introduce this, please. And apologies for my slip of the tongue yet again.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm here to introduce UNEP CMS COP12.24.1.4 Rev 2, Conservation of African Eurasian Vultures. Vultures are truly spectacular birds. They are nature's garbage collectors and provide critically important ecosystem services, cleaning up carcasses and other organic waste in the environment, thus reducing the spread of dangerous diseases. By doing so, they provide highly significant economic and human health benefits. Unfortunately, vultures are under extreme pressure from a range of human activities, and in fact, they're one of the most threatened groups of birds on Earth. In the last 30 years, we've witnessed drastic and widespread declines to vulture populations, beginning with a catastrophic collapse of species in South Asia, followed more recently by a similar crisis for African species. So much so that most Old World vultures are now listed as either endangered or critically endangered on the IUCN Red List. It was against this backdrop that CMS parties adopted Resolution 11.14, the Programme of Work on Migratory Birds and Flyways, at COP12 in Quito, Ecuador in November 2014, with a specific mandate established in Action 9 to develop an action plan for all African Eurasian vultures except the palm nut vulture. So the Multi-Species Action Plan to Conserve African Eurasian Vultures, the vulture MSAP, has been developed over the last 3 years, guided by the coordinating unit of the CMS Raptors MOU, but supported by 3 key partner organizations: the IUCN SSC Vulture Specialist Group, BirdLife International, and the Vulture Conservation Foundation. The Vulture MSAP covers 15 species of Old World vultures, which occur in 128 range states in the African Eurasian region. Its aims are threefold: to rapidly halt current population declines in all species covered by the plan, to reverse recent population trends, to bring the conservation status of each species back to a favourable level, and to provide conservation management guidelines applicable to all range states. We adopted a highly collaborative approach in developing the MSAP, including by reaching out by a questionnaire sent to all range states to gather information about status, distribution, and threats of these species at the national level. 3 regional coordinators were established covering Africa, Asia, and Europe, and an overarching coordinator was hired to bring these 3 components together in a single, comprehensive, and cohesive plan. 5 workshops were held in 4 different countries on 3 separate continents. And the second draft of the Vulture MSAP was subject to a month-long public consultation exercise, which generated a significant response. In all, almost 300 government officials, conservationists, and other stakeholders contributed directly to the development of the plan. The Vulture MSAP identifies poisoning in various forms, both unintentional and otherwise, as the main threat to Old World vultures. But there are many other threats that are exerting significant pressures, such as electrocution and collision with energy infrastructure, lack of food availability, habitat degradation and destruction, disturbance of nesting and roosting sites. More importantly, the plan sets out a framework of 124 actions to address these threats, including suggesting priorities, timelines, and key stakeholders who need to be involved. Various other vulture conservation efforts were already underway when we published the original project charter. So to demonstrate our commitment to collaboration and for Vulture MSAP to complement, as opposed to compete or conflict with other activities, 3 separate standalone documents are annexed to the plan, namely a flyway action plan for the Egyptian vulture, a flyway action plan for the cinereous vulture, and Saving Asia's Vultures from Extinction, or SAVE, the SAVE Consortium blueprint for the recovery of Asia's critically endangered gyps vultures. So just to clarify, the document on the table, document 24.1.4 Rev 2, has 6 annexes. Annex 1 is the resolution, Annex 2 is decisions, Annex 3 is the Vulture MSAP itself, Annex 4 is an Egyptian vulture flyway action plan, Annex 5 is a cinereous vulture action plan, and Annex 6 is a SAVE Consortium blueprint. To briefly summarise the resolution at Annex 1, it adopts the 12-year Vulture MSAP. It urges implementation by parties and encourages non-parties, range states, to do likewise. It urges parties to urgently address the problem of poisoning, the impacts of collision and electrocution, and the illegal killing, taking, and trade of vultures and their body parts. Further, it urges mobilization of resources, and it finally invites establishment of national vulture task forces and development of national vulture multi-species action plans. Annex 2 includes a number of decisions directed to parties, the Scientific Council, and the Secretariat. Before closing, I would like to acknowledge that this was very much a team effort, and some of the key contributors are listed on this slide. In addition, we could not have developed this plan without the generous financial support generous financial and in-kind support from a significant number of donors and supporters. To sum up, the Conference of Parties is recommended to adopt the draft resolution contained in Annex 1, adopt the draft decisions contained in Annex 2, adopt the draft Vulture MSAP contained in Annex 3, which includes Annex 4, Annex 5 and 6 as part of that document. Finally, this document was considered and endorsed by the CMS Scientific Council back in July without amendment. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Nick. Thank you, Secretariat. So I open the floor for comments from parties on the proposal. I see Switzerland and I see Pakistan. I see the European Union. UAE, thank you very much. Senegal, Saudi Arabia. I think this will be our last item this evening. So we have in order Pakistan, please.
you, Mr. Chairman. Pakistan complements preparation of a comprehensive multi-species action plan on vultures in a transparent, collaborative, and consultative manner. It certainly provides the most up-to-date information on the distribution, status, and population trends of all 15 species. All known threats to vultures have been addressed through activities provided in the action plan at regional and species level. Recognizing that vultures provide critically important ecosystem services, offering significant economic and health benefits, and also hold special cultural and religious value, Pakistan supports the adoption of multi-species action plan on vultures. Thank you.
Thank you, Pakistan. Our next call on Switzerland.
Switzerland signed the MOU Raptors during the last COP in Ecuador. And as a welcome gift, we decided to co-fund the elaboration of this multi-species action plan for the conservation of vultures in Africa, Asia, and Europe. We now have the result on the table, and we are very happy with it. Many thanks to Nick Williams and his team, and of course also to all the experts and the government representatives of the range states who have engaged so wonderfully in the elaboration process. Switzerland supports the proposed resolution and its annexes as these documents stand today. And I can say that the action plan is, in our opinion, so well structured that we will now use this very same structure to elaborate a national action plan for the conservation of raptors. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much, Switzerland. Now call on Saudi Arabia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Saudi Arabia have been involved quite actively in the preparation of this action plan, and we are very grateful for the outcome and very happy with the document, and we would like to support it in full, and I think it's going to be a very useful tool for range states involved in this action plan to implement their national duties within accordingly, and get involved in the concerted action in saving this species. Thank you.
Thank you, Saudi Arabia. So far we've heard wholehearted support. Can I hear next from Senegal?
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Les vautours sont des oiseaux exceptionnels, extraordinaires.
These are extraordinary birds. They are poorly known by the local population, and there's a lot of prejudice attached to them. We therefore greatly appreciate the work that the Raptors MOU has done on this multi-species action plan. It's really well thought out, and we can only heartily support all of the resolutions involved, and we're very open as a range state for many migratory raptors to the idea of working with the countries or experts, any experts who might be able to support us to translate this multi-species action plan into a national action plan for Senegal. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senegal. And our next call on United Arab Emirates.
Thank you, Chair. The UAE would like to thank the Secretariat for their amazing work and for preparing document 24.1.4. Vultures are of importance to the UAE. They are an essential part of our culture and history, and we are a signatory of the Raptors MOU. As highlighted in the document, the UAE has supported the development of the Vulture Multi-Species Action Plan by providing support to the coordination unit through providing the core funding of its work by Environment Agency Abu Dhabi on behalf of the government of the UAE, as well as hosting a regional workshop earlier this year for Middle East with the support of the Environment and Protected Areas Authority of Sharjah on behalf of the government of the UAE. Chair, the UAE supports the adoption of the draft resolution and decisions as well as endorsement of the Vulture Multi-Species Action Plan. Thank you.
Thank you very much, UAE. Our next call on Afghanistan.
Thank you very much, Chair. As I'm talking for the first time, I would like to congratulate you as the chair of the meeting. And also I would like to thank the people and also the government of the Philippines for the organizing of this COP here in beautiful city of Philippines. And also Afghanistan is attending the COP for the first time as a new member of the CMS. I would like to thank the Secretariat for the preparation of this document, and also my delegation is strongly support the Vulture Multi-Species Action Plan, and we support that. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you, Afghanistan, and a very warm welcome to the family. I next call on Israel, and I think I have no other requests for the floor, so I would like to close this item after that. Israel.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Israel also was very active in the preparation of this multi-species action plan, and for us too, like the other speakers, the vultures are very important to our ecosystem, and we view the conservation of these species as of utmost importance. We continue to rule in Israel that falconry is illegal, as we do not allow capture, holding, keeping, or training of any wildlife, certainly not of wild raptors. For this reason, we continue to support the Vulture Action Plan in terms of its conservation goals, and we urge the parties to continue their support for this Vulture Action Plan and to engage and enact it in their domestic legislation and conservation plans. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Israel. And a final comment, I believe, from the EU.
Thank you, Chair. The EU and its member states also acknowledge the work done by the coordinating unit of the Raptors MAU, IUCN Species Survival Commission, Vulture Specialist Group, BirdLife International, the Vulture Conservation Foundation, and other specialists. The EU and its member states support the draft resolution and decisions, but I'm not going to disappoint you. We do have some minor textual changes still, but otherwise we welcome the immediate implementation of the action plan, which is important for ensuring appropriate conservation status of threatened African Eurasian vulture species. Thank you.
Thank you, EU. If your reassurance that those changes are minor and not substantive, and I accept that reassurance, then I ask that you give them to the Secretariat. And I believe, given the strong support for this, that we can endorse, subject to the minor amendments, and make the recommendation to the plenary that this is adopted. Is that okay, EU?
Yeah, thank you. So it's for you to decide, but there are several amendments, like we are recalling, not recalling, but acknowledging the resolutions, and not instructing the Secretary, but rather requesting, and there is one paragraph 6 bis that we like to introduce. I can just read it to you if you like.
Yes, please.
So it reads as follows. So it's a new paragraph, 6 bis. So it calls on parties and invites non-party range states to pursue programs of vulture reintroduction in potentially suitable ecosystems which were historically covered by these species, provided that such programs are conducted in accordance with the IUCN guidelines for reintroduction, and other conservation translocations. And there are some other minor amendments that I'm in your hands for that.
Thank you, EU. I'll take those minor amendments as minor, as you assure us. I ask whether there is any objection to your suggested addition of paragraph 6 bis. It makes sense to me. I have one small query myself. You referred to programs of range reduction. I'm not quite sure that I understand what that means. We don't want a program of range reduction, but I think I understand what you're talking about. But could you explain, please? I beg your pardon. I misheard you. I thought you said vulture range reduction, but you said vulture reintroduction. Thank you very much. The rapporteurs are wonderful. Is there any objection to that suggested addition? I see none. So I think with that addition and those minor amendments to which you referred, which you will give to the Secretariat, I think we can accept this, endorse it, and pass it to the plenary for adoption. Thank you very much. And with that, I'd like to adjourn this session. Don't leave yet, because I'm sure there are some announcements by the Secretariat. But I'll just point out we have finished not long after 6 o'clock. So the price that you pay for finishing on time is being here on time tomorrow morning. Okay, so I hear a promise, I think. All right, so with that I adjourn the meeting, but I hand over to the Secretariat for announcements. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. And actually my first announcement relies on you being on time tomorrow morning, because the Executive Director of UNEP, Eric Solheim, will be here tomorrow and will address the Committee of the Whole tomorrow morning at 9:30, so we would ask you all to be prompt. He also has some bilaterals and will be here until at least lunchtime. I'd like to tell you that the side event on climate change has been moved from this evening right now until Thursday at 12:45, and it'll stay in the same room. People have been asking about transport, and I can tell you that tonight transport is leaving from the main entrance here at 6. Well, you might have missed that one. At 6:30, at 7, 8, 9 and 10 p.m. So there's an incentive for working groups to be finished by 10 so you can get shuttled back to your hotels. And I've also been asked to inform people that tomorrow, for those who have received cash cards and need banking services, tomorrow there will be a shuttle to the Mall of Asia leaving at 12:30 outside the venue here. Now on to working groups for this evening. And again, there's some different timing, so listen carefully. The budget group will meet in room 11 at 6:15. The aquatic working group, again in room 12 at 6:15. Terrestrial, again in room 3, also at 6:15. And avian, again in room 2, also at 6:15. The Bureau will meet in a different room, D304, up on the 3rd floor, at 6:45, a different time, a little bit delayed today. And review of decisions will not meet tonight, but will meet later on lunchtime tomorrow. Okay, that's all.
Department of Environment and Natural Resources, together with the French Embassy and SM Supermalls, cordially invite you to an evening of cocktails and the special screening of Terra, a film by Jan Artis Bertrand, a moving documentary that captures the essence of humanity's interdependence with living nature, stunning filmography, stirring narrative, powerful message. This event is happening tonight at 6:30 at Cinema 4 of SM Mall of Asia. See you there.